Good afternoon. I'm Phil Kasten, the Chief of Police with the Town of Hartford. Thank you for joining us today as we talk about parking in downtown White River Junction. With me today as we talk about this important topic is our Public Works Director.
Hi, I'm Hannah Tyler. I'm the Director of Public Works for the Town of Hartford.
And also our Director of Planning and Development.
I'm Lori Hirschfield, and I've been with the town now for a lot of years.
Well, Lori, you have been with the town a very long time, and you've had the opportunity to see the town change, and you've been involved with a lot of the positive changes that are going on around town. Can you tell us a little bit about how parking has evolved downtown?
Yeah, I think that's a really good question because for many of us, we've seen a change, particularly in probably the last 3 or 4 years, really a notable change. With all the revitalization efforts that have been going on for so many years, it's really come to fruition in the last 3 or 4 years, and we've been seeing a lot of new construction, a lot of new businesses coming into town, which also brings a lot of new cars and a lot of new people, which is great. And I think it's something that we're all really excited about. But we've also seen a higher demand on the on-street parking, particularly, where people were used to coming into White River Junction and finding a parking space right in front of where they wanted to be. Now they have to maybe go a half a block or to a couple blocks before they find something, which is actually good. I think a lot of people wanted to see that bustling activity in the downtown, but it's also posed some challenges for us in terms of making sure that people are parking where they should be parking, or they know how to find parking, and so forth. So one of the things we did a couple years ago, we completed it last year, was we did a comprehensive parking analysis, and also looking at just the general circulation in downtown about how vehicles get around, bicyclists get around, and how we get around with our just walking and public transit. So we had some good findings about that. And Phil, maybe you can chime in a little bit about, what your thoughts are on that and how it may have affirmed or maybe not some of your understandings of what's going on in parking.
Well, I think it was great because that was starting up right after I came to town, and not having had the historical background that you did, it was a good opportunity for me to hear from the public and listen to the community, hear their concerns, and talk with my staff about it because I know they had a lot of concerns as well. To start off with, though, I think you mentioned a really important thing. It is challenging, and we've sensed a lot of frustration from the public. I know, Hannah, you've been in town a little bit less time than I have, and you've heard some of those frustrations.
Absolutely.
But I'm grateful because both of you have joined in with us, and we recognize that within each challenge is an opportunity. The study was extremely comprehensive, and I know that as we went through that study, there were some key findings. And you and Matt Osborne from your staff put together a really good presentation that we made to the Select Board as the 2017 calendar year closed out. Do you remember that? Yeah,
I do. And some of those key findings really were looking at how people park. We've known for a while that we probably had this challenge between people who were working in the downtown parking in our limited parking for 2-hour parking all day. And I think in our study we actually confirmed that really firsthand from some of the people that were in our steering committee of the businesses downtown, which having the businesses participate with us was really a good process because they gave us that firsthand experience of what are they seeing, not only from their own perspective of, oh, well, I could park here all day, really, because we've got a lot of parking in the downtown. Well, that started closing up, and that's where we started seeing that push me, pull me kind of thing. And so that was one of the things of really educating people, where are the proper places to be parking if you're here all day? If you want to have the changeover for your customers or yourself coming into downtown, we need to monitor that a little bit more closely, and how can we do that? And we started having these conversations more keenly about what is it that we're going to be able to do in the downtown to help manage that. I mean, you were really very helpful in giving us some guidance in that, I think, for that 2-hour parking and what you've seen worked in other communities.
No, I think it was good. It was an eye-opener for me in a number of ways, but I think it clearly defined who the stakeholder groups were in town, and maybe we hadn't necessarily thought about that in the past. The business community was extremely helpful, and they continue to be helpful today. But they brought with them some of their own unique circumstances that we've worked very hard to try and to address, along with the concerns that residents have had over the long term. And then, of course, we're all busy working with the town manager and the board to attract more economic development to downtown. So how do we balance that? And you had asked me a little while ago what I thought were some of the key points that came out of the study, and it was really neat, the dialogue that we had with the businesses. And I think we came to a point as we worked through that study over a couple of months that a couple of the business owners, one of them actually raised his hand at one point when I shared some feedback from my staff about who was parking in the 2-hour parking spots. And he raised his hand and he said, "I'm guilty. I park in the 2-hour spot all the time." And then it just, everybody started to talk then about how parking had become, because as you had pointed out, Lori, for so long, the demands were not there, and it was very convenient for everyone to be able to get that quick spot right at the door, and many times probably hold that down all day, and it didn't necessarily create the problem or challenges that it does for us today. So I think coming out of that, one of our first priorities was to communicate with business owners and give them the opportunity, the time to communicate with their employees and work on finding out parking alternatives for them, and give them a chance where maybe they had opened a business or had been running a business and operating a business and not necessarily having to be concerned about providing parking or ensuring that there was parking for their staff. So we kind of took a public education approach, I think was what we had narrowed that down to.
Well, do you have that with you today?
Yep, I do have one of the flyers, and it's very similar to what we had worked with this past year on in one of the other areas in town when we were having some challenges with parking. But we used social media and communicated that, and we also did some hand-to-hand with the staff that was on patrol at the time. And again, the business community was a partner with us because they recycled the notices when we had sent them out and shared kind of some of the things that you've done since you've been in town. Hannah, I know you've done a lot of door-to-door.
So since I've been here, I started in April, and I'm completely new to the area. I didn't have any familiarity with the downtown area. So, just coming in with some fresh eyes and seeing the traffic patterns and how people park and how people move around, and going around and introducing myself to the business owners and employees, I've been getting a lot of feedback and have been getting a lot of people reaching out to me with concerns. And so I think one of the really interesting things about parking is it's really just kind of one cog in the whole wheel downtown. I hear a lot about how people walk around. We had some concerns with a lot of people who work for a business on Railroad Row but park down by the stove business, and they cross there, but there's no pedestrian facilities for them to cross. So I think it's really important to take into account not just parking in general, but how people move around town and how people move from their parking space to where they're going, be it a restaurant or their place of employment. So I think taking a look at all of that and how traffic really moves around town, bicycles, is extremely important. We've started to take some of that input, install some signs in the downtown area at this time, but that's really a moving target. We're going to work with everybody and see how that, if it's effective or if it's addressing the concerns.
Well, and that's kind of neat there, your timing when you arrived, because that's several months after the survey was completed. And I know that your staff in the Planning and Development Department has been doing traffic counts all along. and it's continued to change because we've had even some newer businesses that have joined us since the study was completed.
Right, yeah.
How have you seen that evolve?
Well, I
Lori?
mean, we've been doing this traffic counts for over 10 years now, and we started that really to the parking counts for over 10 years, and we did that in part because we knew that as we were embarking on this revitalization effort, we needed to be monitoring it more closely. And you know, how many times can you just count the same parking space in a downtown, knowing that you will have a parking space changing over multiple times? So we started tracking it, and we've seen it really increase, but a slow increase up until the last few years. And that's where a lot of the new businesses, the restaurants have been opening up and so forth in the downtown. Plus, we've also had an influx of construction going on at the same time. So last summer and this summer, we saw the big impact of that, particularly with the two different ends of it, so around the North Main, Bridge Street entrance into the downtown, and then also with around Courier Street and Gates. And as a result of that, we've lost about 40 to 50 parking spaces were being occupied through that construction process. So that's really made this growth and revitalization in the downtown even feel tighter. That's going to ease up a little bit. But even with that, we're seeing this uptake in terms of people just coming here to have lunch. We didn't have that 3 or 4 years ago, people using White River Junction as a destination point for lunch, and they're doing that now. The Barrett Center opening up, they're now doing events there outside of just the theater program, but they have school kids coming in during the day, and they will also make it available as a convention center. So we're feeling all of these wonderful opportunities, but there also have some growing pains. So here we are talking about some of those growing pains.
There's a lot of food downtown now too.
Oh, that's, yeah.
So I think the nightlife has changed considerably. And I know I leaned on you, Hannah, a lot, particularly because this is where, and I think that residents have been so excited about the growth and supportive of it, but if things got a little pinched there this winter, the new businesses opened up, we had a lot of snow this year. We didn't get this much snow where I came from. We had a lot of snow this year, and it made getting around downtown a challenge. Your crews do a great job, and we're fortunate to have them, but everybody was challenged. And as we started looking at South Main Street in particular, we knew we had some other parking issues, not just turnover in the 2-hour spots, but all of a sudden, we had a lot of folks that were just looking to park anywhere they could. Probably a good problem to have, but very frustrating. And you joined me to kind of look into that a little bit deeper.
Yeah, and it was great. We were able to actually, Phil and I went out. We walked the whole length of South Main Street, and we were out there with our tape measure and taking a look at, how on-street parking in that area affects traffic flow and people coming in and out of their driveways. And unfortunately, with the widths in that road, it's just not enough for us to allow on-street parking in that area on either side of the road, past some of the restaurants and stuff. And I understand it can be frustrating on Friday and Saturday nights when everybody's geared up and ready to go out and hit the town, and there's just parking's congested. So there are standards for the legal width of on-street parking. It's 8 to 9 feet, depending on how generous you want to be. And that street just really isn't wide enough to accommodate that and allow for two-way traffic flow. And, in the event that there was ever an emergency and we needed to get fire trucks down through there, or ambulances or police, it would be it'd be a real safety concern. So some people are asking why we're eliminating parking in some areas when there's a dire parking situation, but that particular area was really just a public safety concern.
And I think that was where, Lori, you joined us with that process as well, and we had a member of the select board and the business community that came out and spent some time as we looked around downtown as well. I think that one of the issues that we're addressing going forward is some consistency, and consistency between communities, what people are used to. I know that your staff, Hannah, and Public Works made some changes to signage. We have some more recognizable signage. We moved away from some of the ornamental pieces. We also added some in places where we probably should have had it that we didn't.
Yep.
But we also talked about distances and differences between what our local ordinance was and what the state law was. And I know a priority for me and my department is aligning the parking ordinance with state law. So that there is some
really good idea.
consistency for not only our residents, but also our guests and the business community. And I know that my staff had expressed frustration in the past because they had found difficulties when they went to court. And there were differences between what we were asking people to do and what state law and the normal practice had been. So it's one of those challenges, and I appreciate everybody's feedback and input as we've worked through that.
You know, some of the enforcement that you talk about really is how do we really had, you know, as you recall, we had a lot of discussion about how do we enforce the limited time parking areas. And we went around a lot on that one, and I think we had a lot of dialogue with the committee and with now with the select board somewhat, and trying to see what's the best mechanism. And you know, we are in a community or surrounded by many communities that do use parking meters and have had a lot of success because it's a self-monitoring situation and it's not staff heavy, and you are already pinched in terms of your staff resources. So we are looking into that. I think that that's one of the things I want to let people know is that we are looking into the options of metered parking, and not that it should be a hardship, but I really think to actually improve the situation quite a bit. And so more to come on that one, I guess, as we move forward for the public.
But we've been grateful, as you pointed out, there's several communities around us, to include the community that you had come from, Hannah, and certainly a little further away where I had come from. I think we all have had experience at some point with communities that control 2-hour and other limited parking through the use of meters and paid parking. And we've had a lot of support from our municipal partners in the region to allow us to take a peek at how they're doing things and how it's actually working for them. And I know as we go down the road over the next few months and into next year, that is something that we are looking very heavily at. And I do appreciate having everybody's support and being open-minded as we go forward and communicate with folks about how something like that might actually look here in town.
Yeah. You know, and one of the things that I really want to, echo what Phil has said is it's our goal to be as transparent as possible. We want to take the mystery out of this and make sure that, our signage and parking controls, whether it's a meter or signs, they're as crystal clear as possible, that it's, that it looks the same in White River Junction as it does in Boston or Florida or Texas, that the signs are all the same. So anybody visiting us, it's obvious. We just want to take the mystery out of this, and I think it's really important that we maintain that communication and the communication while we roll it out.
So management of the parking that we have is clearly one thing that we're digging into, and as we talk about picking up some of the low-hanging fruit and really looking at how we can better manage it. But we've also been talking a lot about what we can do to increase the parking availability in the downtown. We have been looking at opening up some more parking opportunities, and maybe Hannah, you can talk a little bit about your exploring that further.
So we have what we refer to as the South Main Street lot. It has a lot of names that it goes by, but we're going to stick with South Main Street. And so right now, that's one of our most wide open parking lots that has a lot of opportunity. And we've had some various plans to move forward that just haven't ever come to completion. So in the meantime, while we explore some of those options and what we can really do with that lot, possibly a parking garage or a parking deck, we're going to do a little temporary expansion depending on how the permitting process goes. We're going to be able to gain somewhere between 15 and 40 spaces, which we can do kind of temporarily, hopefully before winter hits. But this winter, we're going to hire some consultants, hopefully, and take a hard look at what we can really do to maximize that space and do it really well so it's serving the community.
you made a good point about consultants, and it kind of brings me back a little bit to something that you had brought up earlier, Lori. When the folks looked at parking and did the parking study here in town, it encompassed a lot of things. It was really a whole traffic management plan, and it looked at flow, not just at parking, and that's what we've approached this with. I know, Hannah, you've reached out to the University of Vermont, and you have a group of students that are going to help out with taking a look at some of this. You want to talk about that?
Yeah, so this is great. It's a free program for students that are coming from UVM, and it's called their Senior Capstone Project. And it's an opportunity for them to go out in the world and be engineers, be little baby engineers, and come, you know, learn to work with people and learn to work with clients and their communities. And so I reached out to them, and they're actually going to send us 2 teams of students to not just look at parking, but look at how we use the downtown area in general, how we get people in town, how we get people out of town, how do we make it easier to ride your bicycle to work instead of parking downtown, how do we lighten the burden on the parking system by maybe encouraging more people carpooling or walking, or how do we get it better for people to park farther away and walk into town. So looking at not just how do we increase parking, but how do we, you know, lighten that load. And so I'm really excited to get some fresh ideas. They're going to hold some community meetings, hopefully, and do some presentations to the select board. And it's a great free service, and we get to provide them a service too.
It's worked well for us in the police department. We've used classes from Dartmouth College, that the most recent one being an engineering class that did some mechanical drawings and some designs for us inside the facility, that's actually helping with the energy coordinator right now and some of the work that he's doing in the building. But I think it's good because as we started to look at some of the concerns that businesses and residents have, it's not just about parking, it's how traffic flows. How does it impact speed? Can we get people into the downtown, as you had mentioned, Lori, in a different way? Are there alternatives? And you know, this is a very active community. I know you've been very active with the bike path and the use of bicycles and encouraging that during your career here. Is that I know that there was some work with that, or mention of that in the plan.
We have what's known as a bike ped study that really looks at town-wide, but again, talking about the same kind of thing that Hannah is building on with the students, is how are people getting to and from their destination points, whether it's work or they're visiting to the downtown, and you know, making sure that those facilities work well and throughout the town. And one of the things that we're hoping out of the study, you know, is that we can start to look at reducing that, what's known as transportation demand management, it's TDM, and really giving people alternative ways of getting to and from town. And we know from just the experience with the bus advanced transit, we thought when people were starting to build up and taking it, when gas got very expensive, that when gas got cheap again, that it would fall off, and it hasn't. It actually stayed high, and for many of you who don't know it, it's actually free. So if it goes where you want to be and get to, then really look into advanced transit, because that's really one of the best ways to get to and from downtown. And they've actually, during some peak hours, they've added another bus, so it's running every half hour instead of every hour. So those are some things I think that, in partnership with other things going on with other members of our community and other businesses within our community, I think we really can solve this together. And so, you know, one of the things I thought would be helpful for us to really touch on a little bit more is, where are we going to go into the future with this? I mean, from my perspective, everybody's really happy about the revitalization and that become a destination point in the Upper Valley, and we don't want to stop that. So together, I think we can really make some difference in terms of it, and keep thinking about it. You know, we're just in growing pains, just like a lot of other little communities that have now really blossomed again, and it's an opportunity for us to figure it out together. And I don't think that it's going to be, I don't think we want to stop having that growth in our downtown. So, let's just do it together.
I know that's the sentiment that I've heard from everyone. They're very excited about the opportunity that the growth brings, and at the same time, at points frustrated with the growing pains. I think we've talked kind of about some of the next steps as we've gone through and through here. I know, Hannah, you have some things that you're hoping to accomplish in the near future with a couple of additional spaces in that South Main Street parking area there.
Yep.
But with the winter weather closing in, I know sometimes that has an impact on things. One of the pieces that did come up in the study and that we are going to be looking at is winter parking downtown. And how is that accomplished? I think it's really neat how you and your staff are working on a snow removal plan for downtown that is going to be something that's well received, I'm sure. And also, one of the things that came up in that study is how do we communicate that to the public. So those are some of the things I think that are coming forward, right, in addition to our continued work with the other municipalities. And we have met, as you'd mentioned, Lori, with at least one parking meter company, and we've taken a look at some of the technology that's available, and we'll continue to evaluate that as we go forward into the new year. And definitely appreciate your staff, Hannah, in getting that signage up along South Main Street. I know that my staff has been able to communicate not only with the residents there, but also the patrons of a lot of our businesses in helping to clear up some of that, particularly on Thursday, Friday, and Saturday nightlife there. But
if people have concerns, who should they be contacting, Phil?
Well, I think any one of us should be contacted. We've all talked and we're working together and communicating pretty regularly on this. I don't think people realize. Oh, you don't want to be the point person? Certainly, if there's if there's an immediate concern, we always ask that residents contact the police department, and we can step out and address that.
And all of our contact information is on the Town of Hartford webpage. Right. I have people reaching out to me, sending me screenshots of comments on Facebook. So I'm open to any form of communication. Sure. And as I mentioned before, I consider all of this, the community feedback is important. Mm-hmm. Like even the signs, we can change signs, we can add signs, take them away. If it doesn't work, it doesn't work. That's okay. We tried, and I consider it a living, kind of breathing entity,
Well, I think it would be a great opportunity for all of us, maybe if we come back together again like this in a few weeks, maybe as we get closer to the end of the year, and kind of talk about where we're at and where we're going. Does that sound like a plan?
Great idea. I think we should do that.
Look forward to it.
Well, thank you both for joining me here today, and thank all of you for joining us as well. We hope that we've been able to give you a peek inside as to what we've been doing over the last couple of months, and a little bit of an idea of what will be coming forward in the months to come. As we all mentioned here today, please, if you have an immediate concern, it's a public safety issue, please give the police department a call. If it's an emergency, always dial 911. And our non-emergency line is answered around the clock as well, and that's 802-295-9425. And you can reach the Public Works Department through there after hours as well. So please be patient as we continue to move forward with this great opportunity. Thank you. Have a good day.
Thank you.
Thank you.